Okay. With all of that said, that's 2 minutes of intro. Let's start with this Lakers Warriors game 6 that resulted in the Los Angeles Lakers completely blowing out the Golden State Warriors. This was a blowout from the jump. This was a 17-point lead, 27-10, midway through the first quarter. The Golden State Warriors, with the starting lineup that they employed, that in my opinion, was meant more to get stops at a high level because you're inserting Gary Payton in for one of Jordan Poole or Kevon Looney. It ended up being a lineup that they really struggled to get stops with, and it ended up being a lineup that could not space the floor. That ended up being the biggest issue for me in game 6 for Golden State. They took 48 threes in this game, 26 of them by Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. It definitely felt like both Steph and Klay kind of had lost their legs by the certainly the end of this game, if not in Klay's case, really even the first quarter. Everything that Klay shot today came up short. I don't know what it was. I think save for just a little burst in the second quarter, it felt like for whatever reason, Klay was short on every single shot. And the Warriors will have real decisions moving forward about what to do with their roster in order to combat these spacing issues. But this team took 48 threes in a game where it started Gary Payton, Andrew Wiggins, and Draymond Green. And I think that because they started those three players, Golden State was very predictable on offense in this game. It was either they had no chance to score if they didn't pull Anthony Davis away from the basket, because if you didn't involve the man that AD was guarding in a ball screen action, and the Lakers did a really good job, I thought, throughout this game, either in terms of cross matching in transition or purposely doing it. I'm not quite sure what the goal was. They did a really good job of making sure that Anthony Davis was on different players at different times, which makes it just slightly harder for Golden State to get into specific sets in order to take Anthony Davis away from the basket every single possession in a tried and true set. Like, for instance, Golden State, we're going to go through tape here in terms of how the Lakers dominated, particularly with Anthony Davis on the interior. It felt like they were a little bit more scramble-brained throughout the course of especially the latter portion of the first quarter and into the second quarter. It's just they got like a superhuman performance from Steph where he went on an 8-0 run at the end of the first that really got them back into the game, got it to 31-26 Lakers by the end of the first. What I thought, though, was their strategy. They tried to get Anthony Davis involved in the second screening action of the set. Because the Lakers were kind of switching 1 through 4, it felt like they were trying to get both LeBron and AD switched out onto the perimeter. They'd get, for instance, LeBron switched out onto Steph, as we'll talk about in one set that we're going to watch, and then they would run a set with Anthony Davis. And I think the goal was to pull both of those guys away from the rim and potentially open up some sort of action on the backside, or just open up the lane in a real tangible way. And just ended up being a little too predictable, because when you play Draymond Green, Gary Payton, in this version of Andrew Wiggins, you just don't have enough spacing on the court. So even though those two guys were pulled away from the rim, guys like Dennis Schroeder, D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves could really sag down to the middle of the paint, to the nail, and make it so that the paint was just completely gummed up with Lakers all of the time, depending on who was guarding Wiggins, Green, and Payton. And the Warriors certainly got hit by the injury bug here. Andrew Wiggins with that rib cartilage fracture that was reported from that little bump that LeBron gave him in game 5 underneath the basket late. Losing his spacing ability, losing his three-point shooting ability, the Lakers came into this game with the idea of, we're going to make Andrew Wiggins prove to us that he can shoot threes with this rib issue. And Wiggins did not really have that ability. He goes 0 for 3 from behind the three-point line in this game. He goes 2 for 8 from the field overall. And that was a real problem because their big adjustment going into game 4 or 5, I can't remember off the top of my head. I believe it was game 4, was to start Gary Payton. And if you're going to start Gary Payton, you need that third floor spacer out there if you're going to start him next to Draymond Green. If Andrew Wiggins is not that third floor spacer, it creates a situation where the Lakers are just always going to be able to pack the paint. There's nothing that the Warriors could really even do in order to stop that, in my opinion. Let's maybe just kind of dive into the tape here, because I'm talking a little bit more about the Warriors and what they did. And at the end of the day, I think that it was really, really impressive what the Lakers did defensively, more so than a problem with what the Warriors did. Because the Warriors, let's just be real about this, they were limited in terms of what their options were off the bench. I thought Dante DiVincenzo gave them great minutes at the end of the first and into the early second quarter in order to try and make different things happen in terms of defensive energy. He made a couple of corner threes that were really impressive. He had a couple of cuts that really opened up things for the Warriors. They also had Moses Moody. I thought that Moody maybe would have been a little bit more of an intriguing option than Gary Payton. They did go to Moody at times throughout this game. He does play 15 minutes. Ultimately, the significant issue here for the Warriors is that Jordan Poole was unplayable. We'll talk about that momentarily. But let's kind of dive into the tape in terms of what the Lakers were doing that was particularly impressive here. Let's start. This is a set at the 10:23 mark of the first quarter. And what you're going to see here is just look at how good Dennis Schroeder is at getting back into these actions. I thought Schroeder, up until he got ejected for that second technical foul, was absolutely terrific in this game, fighting over the top, chasing Stephen Curry. I thought he played a critical role in Stephen Curry clearly getting tired by the end of this game. And throughout the course of this series, Dennis's tireless efforts, I think, were really, really important in terms of wearing Stephen Curry down. He gets back into this play. He does give up the angle, but the big key here, again, as you can see, I want you to look in the paint as we rewind here. Anthony Davis recovers back into the paint. They set a secondary screening action with Klay Thompson, and Steph ends up rejecting it. But at the end of the day, Anthony Davis is here sitting right in the middle of the paint waiting. And because the Lakers were always going to make Andrew Wiggins beat them from three, given his rib injury, LeBron is sitting right here in the middle of the paint. He just comes in. This is like a same side help. Typically, this is a no-no. This is exactly how you know what the Los Angeles Lakers' goal was coming into this game. At the 10:20 mark of this first quarter, they're helping off of same side corner actions where Andrew Wiggins is the guy in the corner. That's just like a dead giveaway kind of. Oh, that's Draymond. But regardless, it is a dead giveaway that they're helping off the same side corner every single time here when it's Dre or Andrew Wiggins. It was just a little bit too easy, I thought, for the Lakers to collapse into the paint throughout this entire game. Here, you're going to see Klay. This is important. You're going to see the Lakers. They did a really good job early in this game getting back in transition. I thought that was a critical piece of this. You're going to see here, Klay going to drive baseline. Again, no action getting Anthony Davis away from the basket. Anthony Davis just rotates down. Klay is not going to go up when Anthony Davis is around. There's no point in doing it. He's going to contest, and it's probably like a 20% shot if he does it. He kicks it out here to Gary Payton, and Gary Payton is just not a threat. Nobody is worried about where Payton is. Because of that, and because Anthony Davis is Gary Payton's guy here on this possession, you're going to see here that they just don't care, and they're going to sag way off. Anthony Davis is completely gumming up any sort of potential penetration from Andrew Wiggins here. Wiggins kind of dances, tries to get past D'Angelo Russell here. Again, he can't really drive. Anthony Davis is waiting. If he tries to drive and tries to get past D'Angelo Russell, even if he gets past him with this dancing, there's nothing he can really do because he's just not going to finish over the top of Davis. So again, here we go. Anthony Davis grabs this rebound. His presence in this game, I thought, was incredibly important for the Los Angeles Lakers. Here we go again. Steph dancing. And again, as you're going to see here, I mean, this is a switch from LeBron onto Steph at the 9:22 mark of the first quarter. A lot of the time they were switching 1 through 4. Schroeder chases Gary Payton into the paint. You're going to see here again, I mentioned earlier that a lot of the time the Warriors were trying to get Anthony Davis pulled away from the rim in the second side action. By getting LeBron James onto Steph, you were getting both of those guys away from the rim. Here we go. AD plays at the level of the screen as he's been doing throughout the course of this series against Steph. Guards him pretty well. It just ends up being a situation where they have to switch it because LeBron just kind of peels off at the end of the day. That's another piece of this that I think is important. I think that they thought by getting LeBron switched on to Steph early, they would be able to force that one-on-one Stephen Curry, Anthony Davis matchup in space, because LeBron throughout the course of this series has been a little bit more inclined just to execute peel switches as opposed to fighting through those screening actions. So here he gets the kick out, and look, notice how I mentioned that Dennis Schroeder in that initial screening action just went on to Gary Payton here. Look at where Dennis is on the low side of the court, totally in the restricted area already, does not care that Gary Payton is there, just couldn't care less. Gary Payton flashes up to the wing. As soon as Schroeder sees Steph start this drive, he stunts in, and because he stunts in, Steph kicks it out to Gary Payton, thinking that that's going to allow Anthony Davis enough time to recover back into the play and use his length to impede Steph in that driving action. And this is just a shot that someone has to be willing to take. Gary Payton can't really shoot, but this is the issue of having Gary Payton and essentially 2 other non-shooters on the court in this game for Golden State. Tries to shoot it, and nobody really cares that he's going to try and shoot it. They get the offensive rebound. Steph goes up, or Clay goes up, I'm sorry. Missed the shot again. This is just one of those days for Clay. Sometimes you're going to go 3 for 18. Again, just didn't seem to have his legs there, unfortunately. Again, here, I believe you're going to see this is a screen action. This is essentially, I believe Dennis starts this by kind of icing this screen action. It looks like trying to get force Steph to go baseline a little bit there. This is a typical Lakers move in side ball screens, right? Notice this is not an empty side action. This is the side where Klay Thompson is on the court, which means that Anthony Davis, it's a little bit easier for him to cover ground when he knows he has that help defender there and can just shoot out onto Klay potentially if he gets beat. Here we go. This is just Dennis fighting over the top of this screen. Look at this. Anthony Davis plays flat, does a great job at the level, contains Steph. And Gary Payton's been a really good screener, arguably an illegal screener throughout the course of this series, given how far his legs tend to be out away from his shoulders. Typically, your legs are supposed to be shoulder width apart in terms of illegal screening actions. Look at how Dennis just fights through, fights over the top, gets the late contest. That's what you got to do against Steph. You got to be willing to fight through those actions. Again, Schroeder did a great job of that throughout the course of this series. This is a double drag screen in transition. This is for Jordan Poole here. Notice how Anthony Davis not nearly as high at the level against Jordan Poole. I think the Lakers came into this game saying, you know what, if Jordan Poole beats us, so be it. He's been terrible throughout the course of this series. And because of that, they were just willing to kind of chase over the top. And again, here is Wiggins. They're not that worried about Wiggins. They're going to try and force Poole to this baseline, into the sideline here. And they're just not that worried that Wiggins is going to get a wide open 3 again. I think they came in with the idea of forcing Andrew Wiggins to prove that with this rib cartilage injury, he was going to be able to beat them. Again, another thing you're going to notice here throughout the course of this, now that we're halfway through, Anthony Davis completely dominating the defensive glass every single time a shot goes up here. Again, 5:55 mark of the first quarter, initial screening action by Draymond Green. They switch it with LeBron James to get LeBron James onto Stephen Curry. Then you're going to see the secondary action come up to get LeBron and Anthony Davis into an action with one another. This is an empty side ball screen action. LeBron does decide to chase over the top. In my opinion, it's probably because it's Wiggins screening here. Again, I think they wanted to make Wiggins beat them. And look, it's just easy to recover. If you don't think Wiggins is going to shoot, Anthony Davis is going to be able to get out onto him. He's going to be able to contain this dribble. He doesn't have to close out hard. He can close out soft, be able to take him into his chest and make it so that this is going to be just an easy contain. Schroeder gets the little strip there coming across in help. He gets the contest on Klay after the kick out. They get the offensive rebound. Klay goes up again, short again. One of those days for Klay. Anthony Davis gets the defensive rebound again. Here we go. This is where Kevon Looney enters the fold at the 2-minute mark of the first quarter. Throughout the course of this series, when I've broken down film, it's just been very clear that the Lakers thought Kevon Looney, the strategy with him after the way that he really hurt the Kings in that first round series was just to completely sag off of him. The Kings played him a little bit higher. And because of that, the Warriors ran all sorts of off-ball action, cutting toward the rim, 45 cuts, baseline cuts, they're cutting from the slot. They're cutting everywhere, trying to find those little areas. They're running little exchanges to create backdoor cuts to the rim. By not playing as high when Kevon Looney is the screener or when Kevon Looney takes a dribble handoff, Anthony Davis will just shoot out eventually onto Steph, play up on his toes and force that contested pull up or force Steph to beat Anthony Davis there. Just going even under those screens is pretty wild for a guy like, when you're defending Stephen Curry's screen, right? Dennis Schroeder gets over it. It's just a little bit too easy, right? So here, another screen exchange. As we said, they're switching 1 through 4 for the most part in this game. Sometimes on side ball screens, they would not switch and they would kind of just force you to go toward the baseline in an ice action. But middle ball screens, almost everything was a switch. They switch Rui out onto Steph. Eventually, Rui gets beat because Rui isn't a great space defender. And look, like, if Anthony Davis isn't there, if Anthony Davis is defending Kevon Looney a little bit further out away from the rim, that could be an easier layup for Steph. Instead, he has to dump it off to somebody. Here, he dumps it off to Dante DiVincenzo, who, again, had a great little run here. But this is a great contest from Anthony Davis and a great defensive rebound, following it up with a real second jump here to be able to corral that defensive rebound. I believe that was either his 9th or 10th defensive rebound already in the first quarter. Now we're moving to the second quarter, 7-minute mark, 7:15 mark of the second quarter here. A kick out by Klay in transition out to Wiggins. And look, this is Draymond Green getting guarded here by Anthony Davis, and they're just going to have Anthony Davis sit in the paint. And look at how many dudes here are able to rotate into the paint. Anthony Davis is in the paint. You have a foot in the paint from D'Angelo Russell here. You have LeBron lurking weak side on Wiggins, who, again, they didn't really worry about guarding in this game. So that's basically 3 guys that are ready at all times to be there to collapse down on any sort of penetration that the Warriors were going to get. Here, again, the way that this set kind of works here is you're going to see it is Wiggins is going to reverse this out to Draymond. Draymond is going to kick it to Gary Payton. Payton's just going to kick it back out. And it's just, there's not a whole lot going on here until Payton sets this little screen here, which is just a little mini like flary pin down for Steph to come off and to get up to the wing to shoot this 3. Steph's going to make a lot of those. It's a pretty good set. I thought it was smart for Draymond to ask for the ball back and have Payton go and set a screen. End of the day, though, it just didn't work for the Warriors in this game. And I think in part it's because they became such a perimeter-oriented team in this matchup. The Lakers did an incredible job of forcing them into being a perimeter team, as opposed to the thing that turned the Kings series was them getting backdoor cuts and finding ways to put pressure on the rim without necessarily putting ball pressure on the rim, without necessarily having to drive to put pressure on the rim. They did it through their passing and playmaking. When Anthony Davis is sitting back like that, you can't really do that as effectively, which makes it a lot harder for you. to get any sort of real ball movement, which is so important for the Warriors to get teams into rotation and then to force all sorts of ball movement. Here we go at the 2-minute mark of the second quarter now, 2 minutes, 20 seconds left. What you're going to see here, again, they don't involve Anthony Davis in any sort of action. And because of that, he's just waiting. He's just waiting. Steph can't possibly go up for this shot. This is going to get swatted, or it's an incredibly difficult floater here. Forces the kick out to Andrew Wiggins here. Again, you're going to see on this backside here, Dennis Schroeder does an incredible job of chasing Stephen Curry off of this screen here. Just does an amazing job. You're going to see Dante come down. He's going to set this little screen, and look at Dennis get around it. Dennis gets around it, gets right in front of Stephen Curry. Dennis Schroeder did a great job in this game until he got ejected. And again, this is Steph now just has to make something happen, but he has to make something happen when Anthony Davis is lurking at the rim. And here you're just going to see a beautiful weak side rotation. Doesn't even go up for it. It's just the presence of Anthony Davis. You have to be constantly aware. And Steph can't get all the way to the rim here because Anthony Davis is lurking. It makes him rush this little floater when it feels like he's almost kind of in between steps and off balance. He has to throw it up because if he goes all the way to the rim and tries to get on balance, that little window is going to close and Anthony Davis is going to come and protect the rim with impunity in this circumstance. Here we go again. This is a middle ball screen or side. No, this is a middle ball screen with Steph coming up, taking the screen. AD at the level. Schroeder fights over the top, gets back into the play. Anthony Davis, again, just sinks all the way back into the paint when Kevon Looney catches this ball. They're going to be more than happy if Kevon Looney takes the shot. He made one of them today in a late shot clock circumstance, but they're going to live with that every time it happens. Makes them reset with 13 seconds left on the shot clock, so you're going to be a little bit rushed here. LeBron gets over the top of the screening action. Kevon Looney's typically a really good screener. I thought he was a really poor screener in this game, honestly. LeBron fights over the top. They're going to force, I believe, a pretty difficult shot here. Difficult shot. AD again, defensive rebound, completely locking down the paint. This is a set late in the second quarter. 7 seconds left. Clay goes up, takes this three-pointer. You're going to see Dante slide in. And just look at Anthony Davis lurking, always ready. This play was kind of the epitome, I thought, of the first half for the Los Angeles Lakers. Anthony Davis always there, always lurking, ready to anticipate, to read the play, to be that weak side rim protector. This leads into the Austin Reeves play at the end of the first half that results in them ultimately hitting that half-court shot and taking a big lead at the end of that quarter. Okay, so this is where we're at. The Lakers dominated the interior against the Golden State Warriors. I thought they dominated the interior against the Memphis Grizzlies. I think there's a real case that outside of Nikola Jokic and Jimmy Butler, Anthony Davis has been the best player in this playoffs at this point. He's dominating games on the interior. I think he only scored 15 points tonight. Unless he got one late. Yeah, he got one late. He ends up with 17 points, but he has 20 rebounds. He has 2 blocks. He has 2 steals. Completely and utterly takes over the interior of a game. His presence changes the entire complexion of a basketball game just by being in there. That is the difference when Anthony Davis is right. Anthony Davis, nobody will deny, I think, that he is the most impactful defensive player in the league when he's healthy. I thought that was the case. I ultimately had him 4th when we did our Defensive Player of the Year votes on this podcast. I had him 4th for Defensive Player of the Year, even though he only played, 55 games, because I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he was absolutely incredible defensively this season. He carried the Lakers through portions of the year. And I think that he deserves that recognition at this point. If there's a defensive player in the playoffs, there is no circumstance where it would go to anybody else but Anthony Davis at this point. Has been absolutely incredible.